Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me. My name is Krisell Valenzuela, and today we're going to do some community readings for collective healing. I am a psychic medium, and I like to use this as an opportunity to share my abilities with other people, let them get a flavor of what it's like to have this kind of spiritual connection, and also to share my story. So I started my psychic development journey about 3-4 years ago. And back then I had no spiritual connection, or at least I didn't think I did. And I wasn't even religious. I didn't go to church. I had a really hard time going to church and sitting there and listening to the messaging of the church. So I was also very closed off energetically, spiritually. And through psychic development work, through self-care practices, I started to open up. So I know that if I can do this, anyone can do this. And so I like to think of this as my way of helping people connect with that and experience it for themselves. So if you are joining me live, please drop in the chat. Let me know, say hi, let me know where you're joining from. And thank you to everyone that's watching the replay. So, hey, Karen, thanks so much for joining. And I guess while we kind of just give some time for folks to join us here, I'd love to hear what kind of topics are you guys interested in? So I'm going to be coming out with a podcast, and I'm curious what you guys want to hear about. I already have an idea of what of the things that I want to talk about and the kind of guests that I want to have. But I also want to hear from you guys what you guys are interested in. And my lovely partner in crime here, Ira, and I are going to be talking about this after the live stream. So would love to hear what you guys are interested in. And let me see here. I think what I'm going to do, let's just talk about the energy right now. Because I have felt a big shift in my own energy. And I know as a person that is mostly open, if you follow along with human design, if you understand astrology, I am mostly open on my chart. And that means that I'm highly attuned or highly sensitive to movement in the planets. So I have, excuse me, so loud. I have a friend who's an astrologer, and she was sharing that there's some big shifts with Saturn and Uranus and the moon. And I have felt like a sudden shift where I'm just like, bam, let's go get at it. Let's go do stuff. And I feel like myself coming instantly out of hibernation mode. So last month, I think I talked a little bit about cycles and how winter is all about planning and really going inward and getting intimate with what's what your internal environment is going through, and then making a plan for that so that when spring comes, you're able to kind of hit the ground running. And I felt like that for all winter. And then maybe just like a week or two ago, I have felt so much drive and motivation and clarity for what I want to do, what I want to talk about, how I want to position things. So I just feel like that energy has changed so much. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a little bit of an energy reading here. So let's do this energy reading for the next 4 weeks. Okay, so this is going to start with week 1. So week 1 is all about the death cycle. So like I was saying, hibernation mode is gone, and we're going into a new cycle. And that new cycle is all about the balance of the feminine and the masculine energy. So I pulled the Lover's card, and that really is like the orgasmic product of having a well-balanced input from your structured, task-oriented masculine side, and being able to go with the flow. And I kind of talked about this. I'm going to be releasing a video where I kind of talked about this, going with the flow and being able to be in that feminine energy. And I talk about it in terms of like weight loss. Like, weight loss is not just about losing physical weight, it's about losing energetic weight, and it's about losing emotional ties and losing emotional baggage, and even relationship that could end up being like baggage. So if you don't already subscribe to my YouTube channel, subscribe, or actually even better, follow me on Instagram, because that's where I am the most active. And then the last card in this for like this next week, this first week, is about celebrating and being with your loved ones and the abundance of that feeling. So hibernation mode in general is kind of like self-isolation. And then that self-isolation period is ending, and we're really moving into this flow but structure. It's almost like, the way I think of it is, with the pandemic, everyone was ordered to stay at home and isolate. And then as everything started to open up, I know for myself, I started to experience a lot of social anxiety, and that everything started to feel extra overwhelming when it didn't before. Or maybe it did, and I just didn't know it. I numbed myself to it. So then, so as everything opened up, people had to create boundaries and really focus on their boundaries in order to be able to come back out into the public. And so I feel like what we're seeing here is kind of that opening up to spring, letting go of winter, and then starting to come back into community. So the next week, okay. So the next week, it feels like I sense a theme here. So the next week, I see that we are kind of like rejecting. It's like we're rejecting the structure, the masculinity of order and structure. And it's like we're really just trying to go off of our intuition. And even as we kind of try to move through our beliefs, it's like we are trying to flow through our beliefs, which I feel like is a really, I feel like that's a really important experience for people to have, because sometimes we limit ourselves because of the structures we create with our beliefs. So this really feels like finding flow and giving grace to create situations which are where your beliefs are coexisting, where it's everything everywhere all at once, as opposed to like it's this or that, where really it's this and that. So it's like things aren't black or white, they're black and white sort of situation. And in a way, this is going to feel really counterintuitive. So, and it feels really counterintuitive because at first, what's going to appear is it's going to be like, wait, but I feel like I'm losing out on opportunities. And in reality, those aren't opportunities that are meant for you. It feels like those are, it's just the perception that you're losing out on opportunities. Because this abundance mindset is totally different, and it paves the way for, so it really paves the way for the third week. So I'm going through an energy reading for the next 4 weeks. And here we are at the third week. So what comes next after the second week is that you'll start to feel more focused and clear on the very next thing that's happening. And it's just going to create an acute awareness that grows from there. But it starts by focusing on one foot in front of the other, one step at a time. And then that's what takes you to actually creating full abundance, because from that focus, it's like you'll start to realize more quickly the consequences of your actions and how it affects everything else. And from there, it grows. So I often talk about the snowball effect, where you have to start small and build your confidence from there and let it snowball into something bigger. And then when it snowballs into something bigger, that's where abundance happens, because abundance and prosperity happen from little consistent actions that bring you closer to whatever your goal is. So let's see. So now we're getting into week 4. Okay. Which is, so week 4 is going to feel like just everything is turned upside down. And I feel like this is a matter of leveling out the energy, because so in numerology, there is a 9-year cycle, and each year has a different vibration. So if you think of the first year as the baseline, from there, each year creates bigger changes, have different highs and lows up until you get to the 9th year. But overall, at the 9th year, you end up higher than you started. And then the 9-year cycle starts again. And between some of the years, it's not a straight progression. It's not a straight line up. It has peaks and valleys. So 1 is like flat, 2 goes up, 3 goes down a little bit, 4 goes up, but then 5 comes down a lot. And then 6 starts up even higher. So 5 is like a trough year. And so the 4th week, 4 weeks from now, is going to feel like a trough. Like it's going to feel like you've digressed. But really, this is the leveling of this new way of being, in terms of like we've rejected authority, we've rejected male authority, we've rejected structure and order, and have allowed ourselves more flow and intuition in following our beliefs and that kind of thing. And then it starts to feel like it's counterintuitive, because it feels like you're losing out on opportunities, but then you become hyper focused on what's in front of you. And then you start to see the abundance and the prosperity happen. But then when you get into week 4, it's going to start feeling like you're going backwards. And that's because you are starting on a new journey. And so you can't revert back to the old habits. You need to come back to the hermit and be hyper-focused. Come back to as the hermit and be hyper-focused on what's in front of you. And then do that. So instead of digressing all the way back to before we started this 4-week journey, come back just a week and just remember what you did the week before that led you to such success. And so part of that is also being patient. Part of that is being patient. And part of that is allowing yourself to really develop this new mindset that you've created and allowing yourself to lean into it. Okay, so that is the 4-week energy reading. And yeah, we're going to take some questions today. So if you guys are interested in a reading, you can go ahead and drop some questions in the chat. I also want to hear from you guys. What kind of topics do you want to know about? Let's see here. So Suzanne's question is a question about getting answers regarding a health issue. I'm not getting any responses unless I have to further raise my vibration. Okay, so I'm going to answer that question in a bit. Let me see what else we have here. So Lumpia Spice, I'd love to hear about how to better connect with our ancestors and angels. I know there are many different things we can do, but we'd love to hear what you practice personally. So let's jump. I want to address this one first. So when it comes to connecting with spirit and strengthening that connection with spirit, it's actually less about finding new practices and different processes to follow, and more about allowing yourself to let go of your expectations. That kind of sounds backwards, but it's because a lot of our expectations are the limiting beliefs that prevent us from making those connections, whether it be like being very rational, or whether it be dogma that we've picked up from religion, or even whether it be like fear and those kind of feelings like fear, doubt. So just being open is the number one thing that will help you connect with any kind of spiritual being. And then different spiritual beings sometimes have different methods of connection. So sometimes it's not even about how can you better hear them. How can you better make the connection with them? Sometimes it's how can you open yourself up for how they can communicate with you. So it's not always going to be a situation where people or spirit is giving you the feels or giving you images. It's not always going to be that they're going to play a song or leave a symbol for you. So allowing yourself to open up to other forms of communication, like knowing, just having a clear knowing, or even I remember when I first started working with angels, I was riding the bus. To downtown LA, and I remember asking a question or like opening myself up to a conversation while I'm on my bus ride to work. And all of a sudden, like bam, 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 I saw these random words on different freight trucks and different buildings and different billboards all pop out like they were talking to me in a conversation, like they're all making up a sentence. And so sometimes that's how the communication happens too. So as you think about how you are connecting with spirit, also think about where are you looking for the message from them as well. So with angels in particular, angels are very specific in that you have to ask them for help and that they don't interfere with our free will. So if you make a very clear intention, whether it be saying it out loud, writing it in a letter or a journal, or like a visualization, open yourself and explicitly ask for angelic assistance. And then once you open up yourself that way, then you'll start to notice more things. I say more things like, if you're looking for specific help, make sure that you articulate that you're looking for help with XYZ, something specific. If you're looking simply for a symbol or a sign because you want to know that their presence is there with you, then be very specific about that, because they will do it. When it comes to ancestors or any other spirit that's not angels, so like a loved one that has crossed over, what you can do is also invite them to your dreams. So there is actually I had a friend and someone that I mentored that had told me the story about how they really wanted to connect with their Lola, but Lola's grandma in Tagalog, but she had specifically told her Lola when her Lola passed to please not visit me because I would be so scared. And ever since her Lola passed, she never, ever had any kind of like dream visitation or experience with her Lola spirit. And when she told me this, I explained to her that your ancestors, your loved ones in spirit, are still people, and they are quite literal, or they're quite literal with your requests. So she is likely honoring that request that you not have her visit. So I had her write a letter to her Lola and ask her, like, set a date and time to invite her into her dreams. And so she did that. And then she had her very first dream experience with her Lola. So that's something that you can do. I personally took, when I first learned to connect with spirit guides, the first spirit guides that you meet are usually family members, because that's the easiest thing for you to receive than like having a random creature be your spirit guide. So my grandpa is one of my like most prominent guides, and I always use this meditation to go into meeting my grandpa, and then sometimes he visits me in my dreams. If that's something that you're interested in, or you would like more information on, I do have a virtual self-guided class on connecting with your spirit guides. But if you're looking for more one-on-one help, I do have a one-off session that we can do where I can help you make that connection specifically for the way that's going to work for you. And then you'll still get access to my course. That's usually what I do, is that whenever I have a session, one-on-one session with someone, I will give them access to all of my courses. Okay. Ira, did you throw their comments on the screen? Because I wasn't paying attention. So for Lumpia Spice, I see I just came back from the Philippines and felt really connected to them, but I'm not sure how to maintain and cultivate that energy. So I think for that in particular is continuing to honor them through daily practices. So one of the things that I do is I have this oil, this body oil that I use, and I'll anoint my body, and I'll anoint on certain points on my body, and then I'll say a prayer for my ancestors. And that's something that you can do to continue that connection. Another thing is to also have like physical offerings for them. So if you have an altar, or create an altar and just have their picture, or even have an object for them. You don't have to have something physical that was of theirs. You could just write a letter to them and put it on the altar. You can also make offerings of like my grandpa would call beer his medicine. And if I could put his favorite beer on the altar, if your family members had like a special treat or something, or like an object that reminds you of them, you could place that on the altar to maintain the connection with them as well. There are so many different things that you can do to foster that connection and develop it. So, really great question. I feel like I could spend the rest of the time talking about it, but that's also because I made a whole class on it. Let's see here. So one of the questions that Suzanne was asking was about Sayat, some physical pain and not getting a response from guides. And sometimes they don't respond because either they've already given the answers or because the answer is not meant to come from them. I think it's important to know that we are multidimensional beings. And so we're not meant to just like pigeonhole ourselves into one form of anything. And by that, I mean, we're not meant to go to spirits for every single question. You can, and they're not going to answer every single one of them because you have a purpose in this physical life to live a physical life, and they're not meant to be the answer to everything, and they know that. They're meant to direct you and guide you to wherever you need to go. And so it's important to know that if you're not getting the answer or the response that you think that you need or are expecting, to not block yourself into that corner, and to allow yourself to seek, be more open, allow yourself to open up, because the answer may not be to come from your spirit guides. It may be to follow their guidance to where you need to get it. So in situations like this, like I really love traditional Chinese medicine because it seeks to heal people, not only through healing their body, their physical body, but also by addressing issues within the mental and spiritual well-being too. So if you're having a health crisis, definitely seek out medical attention, in addition to seeking out wellness through alternative means as well. I have a regular doctor, I have a regular physician. I also see a acupuncturist, I see a chiropractor, and I see a massage therapist. So, and I also have a therapist, and then I also go to my own energy healers too. So it's important that you seek to treat your mind, body, and spirit, and not just the spirit, not just the mind, and not just the body. So there's my question. There's my answer for Suzanne. Do you guys have any other questions? For anyone that's just joining, go ahead and drop me a hi. Let me know where you're joining from. And then if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I am really curious to know what you guys are interested to hear about. I hear a lot of questions about working with spirit, working with guides, and working with ancestors. I'm going to be doing a podcast, and I have an idea of like the different things that I want to cover, but I would also love to hear from you guys what you guys are interested in. They could be topics that I talk about in the podcast, which is going to be like a video podcast. So I'll be releasing them here in YouTube too. But they could also be topics that maybe I arrange for it to be something that we cover here in in one of these sessions. These monthly live streams are going to be, I guess, evolving, because I feel like less and less people need the readings and more people need the help making the connection themselves. And so I kind of feel like that's the way that it's going to go. Hi, Claire. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that my hair color is kind of like growing out and it's still working for my haircut. And I just got my bangs trimmed like last weekend. And yeah, and I'm growing out my hairs. So how often should we talk to our guardian angels and to our ancestors? So that's really the frequency that you connect with your guardian angels or ancestors is completely up to you. But if anything, at least just be consistent. So if you have the capacity to connect on a daily basis, then make that connection on a daily basis. And it doesn't have to, there's no time limit or even a time expectation. If it means just checking in and feeling into their energy or welcoming their energy to connect with yours, and it takes a minute, then it takes a minute. That's all you need. But if you can't remember or you can't find the time, then do it every other day or even once a week. Whatever you do, just make it consistent. And all day long, I mean, I think the biggest thing to remember is that while our ancestors can be whole, healed, and a wonderful asset to our living life, that you're still an embodied spirit. So you still have this physical life to lead, and to not forget about that. Yeah, doing it all day long could be too much, because if you're doing it all day long and you're not continuing to nourish yourself, you're not tending to your physical needs, and you're not connecting with other people in this life that are physically here, then it may be out of balance. And that's something that you would have to consider, because again, I feel like if we think of the mind, body, and the spirit, that's putting too much. That is a heavy balance, like a heavy weight into the spirit, and not so much in the physical or the body. I think that's a great question. So thanks for asking that question, Karen. I think that's a good point to actually bring up as well, because when I first started my spiritual awakening in 2019, I spent so much time in meditation, and I would meditate twice a day, once in the morning when I woke up, and then once in the evening before bed. And every time I would meditate, I could spend easily, at minimum, 45 minutes. And as someone that commuted, because I worked in downtown LA and I live in the suburbs, and that's easily an hour commute one way. And so I did work a full-time job, and then I had kids at the time, one of them being very small, and then I have a kid that played sports. So I had a very, very full life. And to spend 45 minutes on top of like whatever time I was taking to get ready in the morning, and then another 45 minutes at night, it started to feel like, oh man, how do I don't have time for it all. Because 45 minutes was just in meditation. I could spend easily another 45 minutes just journaling. And so it really made me think, like, I could be in meditation all day. I could journal all day long. Like sometimes I would bring my journal to work, and I would even find time to journal while I was at work. But then it starts to interfere with your living. And you are not an embodied spirit to just go back in spirit. You are an embodied spirit because you chose to come into this lifetime, because you have a purpose in this living body to connect with other people in living bodies and make a difference here in the physical world. And so it's really important that we remember that. When I used to do Akashic Records readings, and there's an archetype. The way that I do my Akashic Records readings is like a report. And what I do is I go into these different archetypes and pull it from your records to help you understand the lessons and your spirit's, your soul's unique signature. And there is an archetype that would come up that is these spirits, they come into this lifetime and live very short lives to make a very strong impact in that short amount of time. And then they go, and then they end, their life ends. And it's meant to have a reverberating effect for the people around them. And I think about those lives as like, they came in here, were like, wham, bam, kablam, let's live a really intense life. And then their life was short. But then I also think of like starseeds who are like, oh, I just want to be back on my home planet. Like life here is so terrible. And it's like, you're missing the point because you chose to be here. Like you specifically chose to be here in this lifetime with a purpose. And if you leave now, then you'll have basically like broken your contract, broken your purpose. You're escaping your purpose. So painting at an easel all day, I feel like that's different because there's expression happening there. And I mean, if you're making these paintings for yourself, actually, I feel like that doesn't matter whether it's for yourself or whether it's for someone else. But I feel like that's different because there's still movement, there's still activity, there's still expression. I've come across other people that are like, yeah, I could just be meditating all day long. And I'm like, that's cool. But then like, what do you have to show for in this life? Like, what have you done with your life other than be to yourself? That's basically like self-isolation, especially for people. I mean, for myself, I have a family. And then for this person, he also had a family. And it's like, you want to be in meditation all day, but what about your family? Like, what about them? What about your community? If you really want to if you are in a position of abundance and you want to make an impact with the community, you want to give that extra overflow to the community, then how are you doing that? Through meditating and being by yourself. I read somewhere that human beings are we are social by nature. And so at some point, we're supposed to connect with other people. We're supposed to connect with community. And that when we deprive ourselves of that for too long, then it really starts to take a toll on our mental health. And I strongly, because I feel like anything in moderation is good. But it must be in moderation. But that moderation, that balance, it really depends on the person, because some people could use or need lots more meditation. Whereas other people, if you spend more than an hour, then it really starts to take away from other aspects of their life. So I hope that answers your question. So I'm curious, if anyone here is familiar with human design? Let me know in the chat. Drop me a 1 if you're familiar with human design. Drop me a 2 if you're not. And I'll tell you what human design is. So human design is an aggregate system. It's a fairly young system compared to other esoteric practices like tarot and other divination practices. So human design is an aggregate system of astrology, of I Ching, and of the Brahman chakra system. And human design was channeled, I think, in the 80s. I have it written down somewhere, but it was channeled in, I believe, in the late 80s by a man named Robert Allen Krakauer, or Alan Robert Krakauer. And he went by the name Ra Uruhu. So he channeled it over like a week of this, I want to say it was like a peyote binge or something. And what he came up with was this aggregate system. So basically taking these 3 systems, it can map out how what your energetic signature is, which speaks to the natural state of your aura, how it interacts with other people's auras, your strategy, how to stay in alignment, your strategy to stay in alignment, your embodied authority, which is like how your body communicates with you when you are in alignment. And then it also, what I really lean into is it shows all of your chakras, and not all of your chakras are like defined. For some people, their chakras are open, which means that they really experience the energy of that chakra through the energy of someone else's someone else's energy of that same chakra. And what I really lean into that is because as empaths, that really gives you insight into how you empath. So some people have open, like an open throat center, which means they struggle with communication, and they really learn about their own communication style through other people's communication styles. The same can be said about like their emotional center. Some people have very open emotional centers, which means that they can sometimes feel numb or dissociated to their emotions. But when they're around people that are really emotional, then they start to feel really heightened emotions. And it's helpful to know these kinds of things, because sometimes if your centers are really open, then you may feel it can be easy to feel like you're sort of a chameleon, and that you become a different person around different people all the time. And so it can also feel like you don't really know yourself. On the other side, if you have a really defined center, which means that for all those people that are open, it's your energy that they feel and that they learn about themselves through. And so people with defined centers, what I notice is that understanding your human design can also be a great tool for building your self-acceptance and confidence, because we live in an existence where we're constantly being told how to live our lives. Someone else sets the standard or expectation for us that may have be so out of alignment for who we truly are. And so we're just so used to just trying to fit into a mold. And understanding your human design can help give you the permission slip or validate you for the unique quirks that you have that you're constantly trying to fix. And when I think of this, so I do offer these types of readings, but you can pull up your human design chart. You can look up your profile, and it's all free on mybodygraph.com. There are other websites like Pure Generators. There are lots of websites out there now that you can get your chart from and look at it. But I started doing these, and it's not something that I advertise. It was kind of just like by word of mouth. And I was thinking about, I was in a reading, and the client, it kept coming up. Like I felt like I needed to do it because I felt like where they were really struggling was just accepting themselves. And so that's why I really love doing those kinds of readings and helping people understand how their empathic nature works. So if you guys haven't looked it up yet, I highly recommend that you look up your own chart and dig into it because it's really interesting. And actually, last year, my friend Heather and I, we did a virtual retreat for empath empowerment. And that was part of the retreat that we did. I wanted to share with people how to read their chart so that they could feel more empowered in their energy and accepting of it instead of basically second guessing themselves. Thank you very much, Ira. Does anyone else have questions? Okay. Well, if there are no other questions, then I want to thank everyone for joining me today. If you haven't joined my mailing list already, join my mailing list at my website, krisellcan.com. Thank you to all the people that showed up live, and thank you to all the replay watchers. I was just going to say something and I completely forgot. I think that's it then. I don't think I can't remember what I was going to say, but if you guys have any questions, you can always email them to admin@krisellcan.com, and then I'll make sure to address them at the beginning of the next live stream. And again, be flexible with me because I feel like this live stream is about to evolve into something new, and I'm always open to hear what you guys are interested in hearing about. So thank you, everyone, and I'll hang out for a few more minutes if anyone thinks there's something to ask. But otherwise, have a wonderful evening, and thanks for showing up today. How often should you use a pendulum? So using a pendulum, it's the same as spirit. So I like to think, so I just taught this pendulum play circle class, and I am going to be offering that as a virtual course, but it's the same thing as connecting with spirit. Whatever you do, be consistent. You don't have to do it daily, but create a consistent practice out of it. And that's going to be more effective than forcing yourself to connect every day. So, yeah. Thank you, Claire. Have a great evening.